Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Tim passed along one of those stories that makes you really go, huh? This is from ABC News. Now, this story is a few years old. It came out in 2012. But this is the kind of story that we can still learn from today, because this is a mind boggler. Wells Fargo fires employee for stealing 10 cents in 1963. Stories from ABC News. Matthew Rosenbaum wrote it. In 1963, a 19-year-old Richard Eggers put a fake dime into a laundry machine in Carlisle, Iowa, and was caught by the local sheriff and convicted of operating a coin-changing machine by false means. Yeah, back in 1963, we were really hard on crime. He was sentenced to 15 days in jail, of which he served 2. He was released early to return to college and fined $50. And at that point, he thought the case was closed. Not so much. 49 years later, Eggers' past caught up with him. He was working as a customer service rep at a Wells Fargo home mortgage in Des Moines, and then he was fired in July of 2012. The reason given for his dismissal was that incident with the dime, or the fake dime. Wells Fargo said in a statement, "We understand the outpouring of concern from Mr. Eggers, and we want people to know that we take this matter very seriously. Wells Fargo is an insured depository institution, a global bank bound by U.S. federal law to protect our customers and their personal financial information from someone who we know has committed an act of dishonesty or breach of trust, regardless of when the incident occurred. It is uncomfortable, but it is a law we have to follow. We have the responsibility to avoid hiring or continuing to employ someone who we know has a criminal record." Mr. Eggers' lawyer spoke with ABC News and disagreed with that decision. He said, "In 1963, Mr. Eggers was young. He did something stupid." That's true. He put a wooden dime in a laundry machine. The spirit of the law is to prevent widespread mortgage fraud, but does not apply to my client, who is a customer service representative. Well, we'll get to that. Mr. Bates did not lay all the blame on the company. That's the lawyer. "The FDIC's regulation is overly broad," he said. There are better, less harsh ways that Wells Fargo could do this without turning people's lives upside down. Wells Fargo, to its credit, said they did everything they could to try to keep the man there, but when we found out about Mr. Eggers' situation, we began working with him immediately to help him learn about steps that he could take to make him eligible for reemployment at a financial institution. Specifically, he and any other workers in a situation can apply to the FDIC for written permission to work at a financial institution despite the existence of the disqualifying conviction. And the waiver process can take roughly 6 months. That's the problem. And does not always result in reemployment. Wells Fargo is touting the fact that employees can get waivers, the attorney said. "Some of my clients have obtained waivers, but Wells Fargo has not yet hired them back." Now, there is a faster automatic waiver process. However, in order to qualify, the waiver seeker must have committed a crime more than 10 years ago, which would apply in this case, received a sentence of less than 365 days, a fine of less than $1,000, and served no actual jail time. But the problem here is that Eggers actually spent 2 days in jail in 1963. 2 days in jail for the wooden dime in the laundry machine. So this is a crazy story. And like I said, this happened in 2012. So this is a few years old. But it's one of those stories that if you heard it, you go, really? Is that true? Is that possibly true? But there it is. So, it's a crazy story. But one of the things you remember is that in our society, whenever they talk about people committing crimes, okay, have you ever, been convicted of a crime? They'll often ask you that in certain situations. First dates, for instance. No, I'm just kidding. But employment situations often. And sometimes they'll ask you questions very, very specifically about what kind of crime, what have you been convicted of, and so on. And one of the things that matters here is you'll notice they said specifically that it had to do with a crime of dishonesty or breach of trust. And I'll give you another example. If a witness is testifying in a case, okay, a witness is going to get on the stand and testify. You can't always get into the witness's background and character and all that stuff like they do on TV, but sometimes you can. And one of the things that you can do to impeach a witness, that is to actually attack their character, that's what impeach means in that context, is you can go after them and say, hey, isn't it true you've been convicted of a crime? Now, not every crime is an impeachable thing, but some crimes are. And so if you've been convicted of a crime involving theft or dishonesty, in some states that can be used to impeach your credibility. So if you've been convicted, for instance, of perjury, that's the best one, obviously. If a guy on the stand that's testifying against my client has been convicted of perjury, you better believe I'm going to yank that out and beat him over the head with it in front of the jury. But a crime involving theft or dishonesty. And it's just the way our laws have evolved that we consider people to be dishonest who lie and steal. Okay? Now, there are other crimes that you can be convicted of. You can be convicted of, assault and battery. But that's not considered to be a crime of theft or dishonesty, okay? And I know that you're going, wait, what? That's okay, yeah. Is it dishonest to punch somebody? No, it's not dishonest. It's violent, it's illegal, it's bad, but it's not dishonest, okay? And so financial institutions, especially those governed by the FDIC, have to worry about employees and theft and dishonesty. Now, you might say, but Steve, this is absurd. Over 10 cents. Well, the question, of course, then becomes, well, what's the threshold? Is it $1, $10, $100? And no matter where you set the threshold, if you said, Steve, it's got to be $100, you're going to find somebody who stole $101 75 years ago, and they just got lost their job. It happens. It happens. I mean, I'm saying just no matter wherever you draw the line, you're going to have something happen. So obviously, there would need to be a process in place, and it looks like there is one. It's just not a fast process. The other thing, of course, and again, I don't know how this would interplay, but a lot of states have got rules on expungements of criminal convictions. So if you get convicted of one crime, for example, in some states, and then you stay clean for years, you can often go back into court and say, look, I've been clean for years. I've stayed out of trouble. I've lived an exemplary life. I want that one thing taken off my record. And many states have got a process for expungement, and I've done a video on that. So this guy here, I'm sure he could get this expunged from his record, but the only question then becomes is whether or not that's going to allow him to be able to say, I've never been convicted of this with respect to a federal standard. I don't know. I haven't seen the standard for the FDIC. I'm not even going to get involved in that. But the point is that the guy did something remarkably stupid. At that time, it was 49 years earlier, involving 10 cents. And even if you factor in for inflation, 10 cents in 1963, today might be $1? And it's still a trivial amount of money. And don't get me wrong, whoever owns the washing machines that this man jammed a wooden dime into. I've heard of wooden nickels, but not wooden dimes. But, whoever owned that washing machine presumably could have been ripped off for 10 cents. And that's assuming that it didn't damage the machine and anything else. So, it's a problem. I'm not saying that we should forgive him for what he did, but there needs to be a proportionality to what the punishment is with respect to any crime. And, it looks like, he spent 2 days in jail for 10 cents in 1963. But the fact of the matter is that down the road, almost 50 years later, he loses a good job over it. That seems crazy to me. So there you go. Like I said, the story's a few years old, but it's a fascinating one. Wells Fargo fires employee for stealing 10 cents in 1963. Questions, comments, put them below. Otherwise, talk to you later.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. #I'm not emotionally attached to your stupid idea. #smarter than the average bear.